Hello, I am live and I am going to find my friend Mindy. I'm going to find my friend Mindy and I'm going to do this because, as always. So I'm glad that you're here and we'll just wait for Mindy to come. Here she is.
Yes, we did it.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, we did it. Here we are. We are. Aren't you proud? I am so proud.
Let's give ourselves a pat on the back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm sending you a hug.
Thank you. Listen, I just wanted to introduce you really quickly, and I thought I would share your post that I was reading earlier.
Sure.
And it says, and so this is what I saw on Mindy's Facebook page. So it says, after 2 years of pouring my soul into these pages, after sharing the most vulnerable parts of my journey, after coaching incredible women who've found freedom after decades of diet culture prison, it's finally ready to be in your hands. So this isn't just a book, it's a manifesto, it's a roadmap, a permission slip, and permission to stop shrinking when you're meant to expand, permission to trust your body when the world tells you to doubt her, and permission to love yourself exactly as you are right now without apology. And I'll just finish with saying she wrote this book for every woman who has ever looked in the mirror and apologized for taking up space. For every woman who has started on Monday with a diet and ended Friday with shame. And for every woman who believes her best years are behind her. So, with that, there's so much to unpack just
Yes.
in that alone. Yeah.
Yes.
So tell
Thanks.
me just tell me a little bit more about you, because I know we have very similar stories. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
go ahead,
Yeah,
share.
absolutely. I wrote my first book about 12 years ago, The Freedom Promise, 7 Steps to Stop Fearing What Food Would Do to You and Start Embracing What It Can Do for You. And that book was really more of a memoir, a chronicle of my years of insanity, really, regarding how I viewed my body and truly how I viewed my life that was reflected in how I viewed and treated my body. Uh, After that book was published, I pursued more training and became certified in functional medicine nutrition. And that training and that experience, because I lived it, and to this day I do, taught me that what was missing for so many was connecting to the wisdom of our bodies, that our bodies tell stories. Every system of our body is connected to each other's. And it's so important that we, especially as women, learn to listen to the messages that our bodies send, starting to send out as whispers. And unfortunately, so many of us are unable to hear the noise. The body starts to scream.
Hmm.
So, so what starts out as a disordered behavior and a disordered relationship with our bodies manifests to a disordered relationship with food. And that creates a whole cascade of issues. I like to say that our physiology impacts our psychology as much as our psychology impacts our physiology, right? Right. Our biology becomes our biography
That's right.
when we don't pay attention to that biography and how it's affecting our biology. So that's why I set out to write this second book. It has a lot of evidence-based science in it regarding what happens to the body, what happens in the body that is either a result of or a contributing factor to those disordered behaviors. And this is not a book about eating disorders. It's really a book about coming home to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so beautiful. And this is the journey that we're all on, right? Ultimately, this journey of self-acceptance and self-compassion. And I talk to my colleagues and patients about really how do we stop this self-hatred, this war that is happening within us. And so can you share with me what freedom really means to you?
Well, freedom means feeling at peace in my body.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to say that food freedom does not mean eating whatever you want. Food freedom, at least the message that I'm trying very hard to convey, means having confidence in the choices you're making. It means that you're connected to your body's wisdom, that you have taken all of the lessons learned up until this point in your life, and feel empowered enough to make choices that are right for you, that you are functioning from a mindset of abundance rather than one of scarcity, that you can let go of the messages from diet culture, basically an industry that has profited off of our self-doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting so that you're mentioning this. So I just gave a talk called The Weight on Weight. And one of the things that I talk about is based on research from Susie Orbach and her book called Fat is a Feminist Issue.
Uh-huh.
And so for people who aren't familiar with her, she was Princess Diana's therapist. And she talks about how we have been schooled as women to suppress our emotions and the expression of our true self with food. And that the merchants of body hatred fuel and feed on our doubt and our inability to like who we are. So what happens is we get this messaging that we're not good enough or thin enough or pretty enough or insert blank enough. So then we're going to buy the product that makes, supposedly is going to make us feel good or feel whatever it is that we sense is lacking within us. And then this just perpetuates, but that doesn't solve the problem. It
No.
just makes these merchants of body hatred rich and wealthy.
Yeah. Right. And you think about those merchants, right? They're not only selling us products, they're assigning points to food. They are assigning green and red and yellow lights to food. They're selling us a story about our worth.
Yeah.
They're weaponizing shame and turning what should be a natural relationship with food into a battleground.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, but what troubles me, and I'd love to hear your take on this, is why is it, I know you and I work very hard to look at root cause. Why is it that we have become a generation that has been hijacked, right? Why is it that we have been able to believe that our value is conditional on our appearance? Yeah, I understand the messaging has been there, right? We've been told to shrink. We've been told not to use our voice. But why is it that we've allowed that to happen?
Yeah. And I think the answer to this goes back to this intergenerational and cultural piece that we can go back as far, like, goodness me, to the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, right? So even if we don't have to go that far back, we could just even go back. Let's just go back 75 years even, or
Okay.
even, the length of time I've been on the planet, which is about 60 years. So we, as women, we have been suppressed. We didn't have a voice.
No.
In the 1940s and 50s, like post World War II, women had a few options. If you did not want to be a homemaker, and nothing wrong. That is the most important role, actually, in our society. Is we are the ones that birth the children, and we are the ones that raise the children, and we are the ones that contribute to the society. But the thing is, because of this, when you push something down so much, eventually it's going to pop back up, right? And I think that's what happened in the women's movement, because not every woman wanted to be in these, and many of these relationships were oppressive, right? Abusive and oppressive.
Right.
So women rose up. And so then the pendulum swung, in the 70s and 80s to like, okay, women, we're equals. Let's. And so this is amazing. Gloria Steinem and Revolution from Within. And we fought for our ability to be at the table, right? But when I did that, when I graduated from high school 40 years ago, I had very, limit. The options were opened, the doors were opening, but it was the time of affirmative action. And at that time, there was also a lot of the racism piece as well. So women of color were even further suppressed than white women, right? So
Right.
affirmative action was all about, okay, we got to hire women. We got to bring women into the boardrooms. And that didn't go over so well. Anyway, I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but my point is that we swung the pendulum, and now women have all these options, which is, don't get me wrong, this is very helpful for women to have choice. But this choice can come at a price. And I feel partly that I have felt caught between two generations, right? I've been felt caught between the 1950s, Leave It to Cleaver, Beaver, stay-at-home mom, and the Gloria Steinems, like get out there and be a president, start a company, be the president of whatever country you want to be. But you can't do both.
No.
And women did. Women did. And men didn't step in. So what
No.
happened to all of us? We became totally burnt out.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and so much of our value as a culture is based on how we look versus how we feel and what's going on inside of you.
Right. And about that. So much of it is performance based, right? You're talking about the woman. And again, it's looking for validation outside of herself,
Yeah.
whether it's outside of the home, whether it's in the corporate boardroom, whether it's on the bathroom scale.
Yeah.
So much of how we value ourselves is dependent upon the outside voices, the outside influences. So that brings me back to the need to come home to ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd like to also mention that, I've had an eating disorder and then morphed into disordered eating.
Right.
And a really interesting piece of the puzzle. So I speak to how there's these four sort of big pieces: the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And we could spend so much time talking about each of those four areas. Most people start on that physical level. And what I find is really important to understand is this bi-directional relationship that we've touched on between the gut and the brain, and the brain and the gut, but also the heart and the brain. And these three players, if you will, the gut, the heart, and the brain, are the drivers of our behavior. And when we talk about, you mentioned the whispers, right? How do we help women connect with the inner whisper and to set down the microphone of the mind and all this sort of outside chatter that seems to get in there like a virus into the brain?
Yeah. Well, when I work with women who are ready to release themselves of the broken lies of diet culture and finally reclaim their power, we start with recognizing the voice that isn't theirs, right? So some would say looking at your why, right? So the why is so much more than why you want to heal. It's not about so much, we get to that, But the why is really, why am I reacting the way that I am? Why am I being driven by these urges? What is it that I'm really hungry for? Why do I have this need to
Mm-hmm.
react in such a way? And that's where it has to start. So we've got to recognize, we've got to acknowledge, and we have to take responsibility and get curious for what we're really hungry for. What is it that we are truly yearning for? What is it that we are seeking? And very often that goes back to messaging. And I always like to say, we don't blame, we explain,
Mm-hmm.
because very often the messages that we received were given to the person giving the messages to us. You know, it's generational,
That's right. Yeah.
right? So it has to start with recognizing, and then we need to reject. We need to reject the voice that is in ours, reject the lies that we have become attached to, the toxic and inflammatory messages that are creating the toxic and inflammatory symptoms in our heart, mind, and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can start to reclaim what is rightly ours.
So let's just break these steps down. So this first piece, which is this recognition piece, recognize.
Mhm.
So we want to recognize not only the thoughts, but also the emotions, the impulse that is happening that can feed. So I get often mentioned that this is this cycle that we get trapped in, this thought emotion cycle. And they're like this. They're like so close, right? And so this recognition piece, I usually mention entering the circle, entering from this thought perspective. Now, sometimes I have found myself, knee deep in the ice cream bucket before I was even aware I was in the ice cream bucket,
Mhm.
right? So, can you just speak to that first step a bit for people, that recognition step?
Yeah, no question. But you talk about thoughts. Thoughts are usually created from a belief system,
Mm-hmm.
right? And thoughts are not facts. Beliefs are not facts. So we need to go back, and that's where a pause is very important. Okay. So, we have beliefs, thoughts, urges that lead to us finding ourselves buried in the ice cream container or the bag of M&Ms or whatever it might be for us. For some women, it's the bottle of wine,
Mm-hmm.
but it's that need to check out. So the pause method is very, very important. So it's the P for pause, the A for awareness. What is really going on? What am I looking for? Understanding. And that's a very important step, understanding, because it allows us to honor where we've been and honor where we are. It takes the shame away
Mm-hmm.
to understand that we're doing the best that we can
Mm-hmm.
with what we've been given. The S, select. Select the behavior that really suits us and then evaluate. How am I feeling now?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. Yes. Yeah, I have the similar steps, but I like the pause and the acronyms that you've come up, the
Mhm.
which each steps represents, because there's so much power in just taking a breath. Like, let's just take a beat here. And so with this awareness, with the ability to ideally pause before we even open the freezer,
Yeah.
then we can, at that intersection, we can perhaps create a new neural pathway, a new behavior. But I'll mention to the listeners that, for myself, this was not, a one-hit wonder, right? This is a constant, a constant evaluation of my day, and everything is different. You're never the same person from breath to breath, moment to moment. Hormones are changing daily, hourly, right? So we want to continuously be graceful and merciful and compassionate with ourselves, because if we stumble, as I have so many times, what
Yes.
tends to then happen is this dialogue of, well, look at, oh, there you went again. Oh, yeah, told you couldn't do it. Yeah, oh, well, and then it's like this browbeating, into submission. And this is the dialogue, the thought process is happening between the 2 ears that's not communicated out in this open space, that needs to shift, because this pushes us and keeps us stuck in this sympathetic drive, which drives the cortisol, which drives the need to soothe, which drives the reach for the sugar, and boom, here we are again, right? And
No,
so it's a process. So be graceful with yourself.
no question. But it's also very important for our listeners and whoever is going through this to understand that this disordered behavior is not the problem. It started out as a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can accept that, it helps us to go back to the recognition. It helps us to understand our why. It helps us to understand what the driving force is. It eliminates shame. It allows for compassion. And after that, we can experience a letting go.
Mm-hmm.
And, I talk about radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is not passive resignation, it's
Mm-hmm.
active choice. It
Yeah.
means caring for yourself from a place of love, not fear. It's about setting boundaries with diet culture, not setting restrictions on yourself,
Mm-hmm.
but looking at the choices you can be making from that place of abundance.
Mm-hmm.
What is going to serve me in my greater good?
Right. Yeah. And so I have found, this piece of, um, what purpose is this serving, right? So when we find ourselves and have this recognition that, okay, I may not actually have the healthiest relationship with myself. So that's the first really important to acknowledge. And then it becomes about, as you mentioned, that this has served a purpose for you. And so can we figure out what that purpose has been, and recognize that in this point in time, your adult self, or however you are at this point in time, doesn't actually need that strategy anymore, that coping mechanism, if you will, to survive.
Yeah. And what I very often like to do with clients, it comes up a lot this way, is instead of talking to a woman about why she might be stuck, why she is resisting the change, let's look at what this is behavior is doing for you. Where is the
Mm-hmm.
reward in it? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's always a reward in it. Even if the reward is not serving you well, it's still what you know. It's become familiar. And we tend to seek familiar when we don't feel safe. And going back to the recognition piece, very often when we are behaving in ways in an effort to check out, when we are looking to shrink, change our bodies, it's because we don't feel safe in them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very important piece. And then that becomes then what can I do today to feel safe?
Mm-hmm.
What can I do today to let myself know that I am safe? What can I do to create safety for myself?
Mm-hmm.
And and that requires looking at our environment because we're not going to get well in the environment that is making us unwell. And if we can't change our physical environment for any multitude of reasons, then it's important to change the environment within. And that's how we think, that's how we feel,
Hmm.
that's how we love.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. There's so much in this world that is with that, not we cannot control. And sometimes there's this connection with what we're eating and this concept of and this word control.
Mhm.
And one thing that you actually are able to, I like to use the word adjust for yourself, is the thoughts that you think. And
Mhm.
this is so important because the thoughts that you think affect your physiology. Your thoughts create those neuropeptides. The neuropeptides affect the hormones. And then those hormones in turn affect how we feel and then the steps that we may take in relationship to how we nourish ourselves. And I know for myself, I have used sugar as a soother.
Sure.
And it's interesting to look back for myself. I'm adopted, and so I was a formula fed child.
Mhm.
And formula, not, I mean, whatever choices, the interesting thing to make out or point out about formula is it is higher in sugar,
Yes, very sweet.
right? And there was a study that they did on rats. They gave them 4 doors they could go through with at free will. Door number 1 was cocaine, heroin. Door number 2, heroin, flour, and sugar.
Hmm.
All of these come from plants. I'm not advocating for the first two that I've mentioned, but the one that they chose at free will was sugar, actually. So we have to understand that the brain has been primed, if you will, for this substance that causes us to seek a hit of dopamine.
And take this a step back,
Mm-hmm.
further back. Our very first experience with experiencing nurturing is being fed,
Mm-hmm.
right? As infants, when there's no sense of self, there's no ego, there's no sense of autonomy at all. We're thrust into this world, we're wrapped in warmth, and we're fed.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, very often that first taste is sweetness. The brain remembers this. So later in life, when we need to feel better for whatever reason, the brain remembers eat, feel better, sweet, taste better. And also, biologically, the taste buds on our tongue in the front are plentiful for the receptors of sweet.
Yeah. 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 I mean, this is the thing where it's a important point. It's also not that the fact that we're fed, but it's also what we're not being fed as well. Right.
It's very profound, no
Yeah.
question. Yeah, and so nutrition, yes, is very important, but what's more important is how we are being nourished,
Yeah.
right? And the seventh step of my 7-step platform is to surround yourself with what truly nourishes, because what truly nourishes us is not going to be found in the kitchen. It's
Mm-hmm.
our sleep, our relationships, our movement that's appropriate for where we are in our lives. It's
Mm-hmm.
how hydrated we are,
Yeah.
right? Food is a small part of it, and functionally speaking, if we were to think about the functional medicine matrix, right? The skill side on the right side of the matrix, food is a fraction of what
Mm-hmm.
is important there. As I said, it's sleep, movement, relationships, connection. For some, it's spirituality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know for myself, one of my pet peeves about the health industry is everyone is focused on the what. Like, what are you eating? And don't get me wrong, of course, we do want to be, this is a piece of the puzzle, but the other piece that gets missed is understanding that how we eat, right, is equally important because digestion and everything to do with it is happens in a parasympathetic or relaxed state. So if you're, chomp, chomp, swallow, eating on the run, have this sort of fast food approach to your food, you are likely going to experience this concept of when the body says no, right? Like we started off talking about, well, the body actually, it is talking to us, but a lot of us aren't listening because there is this disconnect in this pursuit of, people are chasing a lot of things that they just don't need to be chasing. So, I'm talking in terms of the material plane. And I have this quote from Michael Pollan that says, we've given up 2 hours a day, 2 hours a day to screens. What have we given up? We've given up cooking in community, eating at the dinner table together as a family. And even if you live alone, gosh, I lived alone from age 25 to about 40. And I still, would eat with my cat nearby, you can still, but I wasn't distracted in my eating, right? You have to, I know a lot of people, speak to this piece, well, I'm alone, I'm by myself. And so I put the TV on, or I eat in front of the TV, and it's these habits that we fall into that take away the mindfulness and the signals, because then we don't hear the signals from the body. But it's just important, this how we eat piece, I think it's under acknowledged, and the emphasis on what to eat. I almost feel like the nutrition industry has bipolar disorder, in the sense that you've got like vegans on the one extreme and then carnivores on the other, right? And it's like, what's going on? Like, why are we so extreme in our approaches here? And if that's what serves you, great. But I feel like no one's talking about this relaxed piece.
Yeah, I'm so happy you brought that up, because very often I'll talk to clients about who they are as eaters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that helps us to dive into the why, the how, the when they're eating. And when those three pieces are truly explored and understood and acknowledged, we can understand the context within which our behaviors are evolving. The what has a funny way of taking care of itself.
Mm.
Because what's missing in what you just described is the connection to self.
Mm-hmm.
When we as a culture are so tied into eat this, don't eat that, we lose the fact that we are the experts of our experience.
That's right.
And in order to honor being experts of our experience, that's the only way we can be masters of our own healing.
Yeah, it's beautiful the way you phrased that. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. And, we've really deferred. I grew up with the belief, with parents who believed that, well, the doctor knows best. Right. And, and this, hierarchy, if you will, or this power differential, this abdicating responsibility of health and self, to outsourcing it to someone else. I'm not saying not to go to the doctor. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that so much can be helped when you understand that you have so many tools within your own self, within in these three voices that we talk about: the mind, the heart, and the gut.
Mhm.
The problem is that most of us are living from the neck up, just listening to the thoughts. And those thoughts are often based in criticism or unworthiness or comparison,
Comparison.
basically ego, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what I love about your work, is that we are wanting to acknowledge that, okay, actually, like you said, beliefs and, thoughts are beliefs, and beliefs, they're not all based in truth, right?
No, no. And it's really the disease of not enough. It's the disease of not feeling or believing that we are enough as we are right now. And I think that as women in midlife and beyond, consider myself beyond midlife at this point, I can actually look back at every decision I've made, good, bad, and ugly, and there were plenty of bad and ugly ones. but they were the best that I could do at the time. I
Yeah.
truly believe that now. And
Hmm.
that allows me to be at peace. And
Hmm.
that allows me to feel free in my body. And
Hmm.
it allows me to continue to make choices that I can feel confident about, particularly when it comes to my body. And particularly when it comes to how I nourish and feed and fuel myself because of my experience with chronic eating disorders. You know, at one point in my life, I was 2 pounds away from being hospitalized.
Hmm.
And it was 1992. There were no fancy spa-like residential facilities. I was being admitted to a psych ward, basically.
Hmm.
And all I could picture in my head was them sticking a needle in my arm, feeding me intravenously. And I certainly wasn't going to be in control then.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that was when I took steps to become recovered. But there were many years that I was just doing recovery. You know, I was showing up for my doctor appointments. I was showing up for my therapist. I was meeting with a dietitian who was telling me what I needed to be eating. The doctor was telling me what I needed to weigh. The therapist was telling me who to blame in my life. No
Hmm.
one was asking me what I was hungry for. Nobody was
Hmm.
asking me what it was that I needed. And no one was addressing the fact that I couldn't ask for it.
That's big.
Yeah.
That's big.
So that's why I say there's a difference between doing recovery and being recovered.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that just points to this whole thing that we are human beings, but we
Mhm.
tend to operate in the world as human doers, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, what are the ways then that you nourish yourself without food?
Ah, I get outside in nature.
Hmm.
I connect with friends that bring value to my life. I have let go of a lot of people who don't. Um, I myself have experienced a tremendous metamorphosis, being widowed at 49 years old.
Mm.
Um, and then I didn't pursue any of my training and certifications till I was in my mid 50s. So my life had exponentially changed from what I always thought it was supposed to be. And there were a lot of people in my life that had trouble with that. Um,
Mm.
so I make sure to add value to my life in every experience I have. I relax every evening by shutting down at a certain time. I enjoy needlepoint. I enjoy reading. I play golf. I'm a Pilates enthusiast.
Yeah.
And I get such joy from my grown children and my 8 grandchildren.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's how I nourish myself. And my work nourishes me, I have to say. Working with the women that I am blessed to work with who share so much of themselves with me nourishes me beyond and allows me to embrace my metamorphosis as much as it allows me to pay it forward. And
Mm.
that's why I continue to do the work that I do.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to touch back onto this piece of this very inspirational story that you have, and the piece of inspiration that I think is helpful to really acknowledge here is that many people think it's, I'm washed up, it's too late, I'm in a has-been, right? And I remember this is in 2010, I went to a Hay House event, and Louise Hay she was, I mean, greeting everyone at the door, and I had many interactions with her throughout this event. But the thing that sparked me the most, or impacted me the most, was when she got on stage at 87 and she said, "Put up your hand if you think, it's too late, your ship has sailed, da, da, da." So I put my hand up. I was 44 at the time. Then she says, "Put your hand down if you are less than 64. So I did, and most of the hands went down. And then she said, "Look, I didn't start this company, Hay House, until I was 64.
Yeah.
So, and this right now, as I stand on this stage at 87, is my best decade yet." So it really was like so important for me to reframe this concept of yeah, either not good enough itis, or there's not enough time itis, or it's too late. And and so you're just another beautiful example of someone who went through a metamorphosis and, has sparked so much, this ripple effect into the world with your work and the contributions you're making. So anyone who's listening, you feel like what we're talking about, like, yeah, it's too late. Remember, these are just thoughts. And this is your life. And you're the artist. And you've got the paintbrush. So paint your canvas in the way that suits you best. And hopefully, through that ability to be of service to yourself, you're serving humanity as well, because we're here for each other. And so I just wanted to really acknowledge this, because I know I struggled with this, who's gonna, don't do it. And yet that's such a limiting thought, right?
Yeah,
So shift it around, right? Why not? Just do
you
it.
know, a mentor of mine says that discomfort is temporary, but
Yes.
growth is permanent.
Nice.
And that is something that so many of us have to adhere to. We all have fear, right? We all have something that we could allow to hold us back. And very often those fears are coming from a legitimate place, an experience that we went through, a trauma that we experienced, um, memories that we hold on to. And we all have a story, right? But there are parts of our story that can be reframed, can't always rewrite them, but we can turn the page on that story, find a blank page, and then start to write what will be our happily ever after.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
very similar to your paintbrush metaphor, I really like to think in terms of every day that we are blessed to wake up and feel the ground beneath our feet is a day to live fully.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I'm well aware that this month of September is Suicide Awareness Month, and I'm a suicide, and I like the quote that I use, that I think is that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary situation.
Ah,
So just sort of similar to what yours is about that growth. The growth is permanent. Discomfort is temporary. Growth is permanent. Same with these thoughts that we might have of worthlessness, that what's the point? There is a point. You're here for a reason. You might not
yes.
be able to see this right now because of the steps we've taken or the trauma that we've experienced. And you can, like you said, these events that are in the past, we cannot change that it happened, but we can change what we've made them mean. We can change the beliefs that we formed as a result of those experiences. I had the belief that I wasn't worthy, I wasn't wanted, walked through the world wearing this mask, then that I had to prove my worth to everyone, hence the overachieving. And no jumping high enough ever solved the emptiness within for me. So I truly feel that, we've gotten through this whole conversation and we haven't addressed really the thing that is bothering me the most is this GLP-1 craze.
Ah,
And this is just another outside influence to resolve something that can be resolved internally.
yeah. Again, people are looking for the quick fix. It's the instant gratification. It's the something outside of themselves. It's not taking responsibility, not being accountable. Um, and that just is part of the insidious disease of not enough that
Yeah.
so many of people in today's culture are struggling with, and it's the comparison and criticism that is driving so many to continue to seek outside of themselves
Yeah.
when the answer is within us. The answer is so in the, even thinking about a higher power. for
Mm.
me for me the concept of the higher power is again something outside of myself.
Mm.
When I can dig deep and I can connect with that part of my heart, my soul, my mind, my body, that's my deepest sense of self, which for me is my highest self, my highest power.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the power lies within us. The power lies within you.
Mm-hmm.
The power is not outside of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that, this, so speaking to this, there's so many things that I know we've got to be mindful of the time, because I know that you have to go and to help serve the next person in front of you. So I want to just tag back quickly to this point I brought up about the GLP-1s. You make GLP-1 inside of you. And the
Yeah.
reason, right, anyway, I won't go too much into the physiology at all, actually, but I'll just say this, that let's get it back to fundamentals. We've gotten very off track from genetic modification of food to the chemical, pesticide, insecticide use to, as we talked about, the inflammatory foods, to how we eat, what we eat. All of this is important, but this connection to ultimately what drives the eating is ultimately this sense of, I think, this not good enough itis piece of the puzzle, and disconnection from self, but also from others, because we need each other. We need each other. And we used to eat in community, right? So there's so many pieces to the puzzle here. And I think I would love you just to say, just to wrap this up, what really is one perhaps step you would like people to take? One is to go buy your new book coming out September 8th, but another step they could take is
Uh, Thinking about what they can let go of that is no longer serving. True transformation for me has become less about what we do to change and more about what we can let go of in order to become the change we want to see, the change we want to put out into the world. We have to think in terms of becoming expansive. That has nothing to do with the size of our bodies, but expand your presence on this blessed earth. You don't have to shrink in order to be valued. And that starts with what can you let go of? Whether it's a toxic belief, whether it's a toxic situation, whether it's inflammatory thoughts, what is it that you can let go of in order for you to become the change you want to see?
yes.
Thoughts there.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I'm very grateful to know you, and I honor you and love to support you. So so I'm here if you need, and thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you, Christina. And I know you have a book coming out soon, and I can't wait to have a similar discussion with you at that time.
Yes, well, that'll be great. Thank
All
you.
right.
Okay,
Thank you
lots of
so
love.
much.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Bye.